Hey everybody, it's Shizug. Welcome back to Breaking the Deadlock. Today we're going to find a way to counter every single hero in the game. I've gone through and I've made a list of every single hero and counters that I think are applicable to them that aren't hero versus hero matchup specific, but rather something that you can do in any game that you play as any hero that you main and counter any other hero on the other team that's causing you problems. We're going to do that through itemization and also some other tips and tricks like positioning and other various things. We're going to learn how to identify what kind of build that hero is going for and how to correctly shut that build down. We're going to talk about different types of counters for certain builds. And then we're going to go through every single hero in order and figure out what shuts them down. One of the first things that you have to do when you want to recognize how to counter a hero is first recognize which one is the one that you need to deal with, essentially. It's either the one that you're dying to the most or simply one that has the most net worth and is clearly popping off on the other team. You can first take a look up top and recognize which heroes have the most souls and recognize that you might want to counter against them. It's not always the richest hero that's going to be the problem. It sometimes is poor ones that have a lot of impact in fights or have the ability to lock you down and stuff like that. Like, for instance, they have a Dynamo who all he really needs is some sort of initiation and he can have impact on the game. But essentially, you want to recognize who you want to counter and recognize who's killing you and who's picking you off in fights and understand that that's who you want to spec into. So you don't want to just blindly follow your build, but you rather want to have intentionality by looking up at the top of the screen, recognizing what heroes in their game, and problem solving in between these fights and trying to figure out what could fit into your inventory that would help you stay alive versus that problematic hero. Additionally, it makes sense to also recognize if that hero is doing spirit damage or bullet damage. A lot of the heroes on the Amber side actually could go for either a bullet or a spirit build, and it's important to recognize which one they're speccing into because you don't want to end up buying bullet armor if they're going spirit damage and vice versa. So a lot of the times I'll look up here and I'll get a grasp of what kind of things they're building and see what they're focusing on. If at any point you want to check out what kind of damage you're taking and kind of identify what's really hurting you, you can see a breakdown of which abilities are being cast on you and how much damage they're actually doing to you, and also right-click damage as well. You can hold Alt and check out in the top right, there's an incoming damage button, and you can click that and it will show you a breakdown of different damage, and you can even sort that down to different time frames as well. So this Yamato took a lot of gun damage, but also a mixture of damage from the Lash. Once you've identified a hero that's strong, it's a good place to start thinking about item choices. And that's where we're going to go and talk about different types of items that can counter heroes. If you haven't seen my video about understanding itemization in Deadlock, you should check the description for that video. In that one, we go over the full repository of items that we have available to us and some of the scenarios that we're able to use them to their fullest potential. In this video, though, we're going to go over some different types of counters that I think are important to kind of categorize these items into. So here's our first category of items: anti-heal items. We have Toxic Bullets, Healbane, and Decay. All three of these items are going to reduce healing that other characters can do, and Toxic Bullets and Decay will both apply a percentage-based bleed of the current HP of the enemy hero onto them. So those big tanky guys that heal a lot, these are your go-to items. Next, we have Cancels. And as a reminder, these aren't literal terms of status effects and stuff like that. These are just general groupings that I think these items have purpose for. These quote-unquote cancels, they're all able to kind of stop people from doing things to you. They're able to cancel out the ability of someone else and let you walk away unscathed. We have Debuff Remover, Unstoppable, Rescue Beam, and also Ethereal Shift from the Spirit category. Debuff Remover is going to remove status effects that are negative while your hero is still under control. Unstoppable, once activated, is going to make it so those status effects can't even apply to you in the first place. Rescue Beam repositions allies so that those abilities that are affecting them are not as effective anymore. And Ethereal Shift lets you momentarily dodge abilities that are coming at you. And yet again, we're going to talk about which heroes these apply to in the next category, but I just wanted to give it an overview as we go through them. Next, we have Silences. This is one of the most impactful categories of items. All of these items prohibit your enemy from casting abilities onto you and your teammates, or even using mobility spells to get away and such. What we have in here is Silencer, which is going to make your bullets apply the silence. Silence Glyph, which is going to fire a projectile and then silence them. And Slowing Hex specifically silences movement-based abilities and items. And lastly, Curse will interrupt, silence, disarm, and prohibit item usage for that hero that it's casted on and nullify them for a short amount of time. So if you want to prohibit a hero from doing something in the first place, this is your go-to. Knockdown deserves a category of its own as an interrupt for some kind of channeling spell that's already going on. let's think about everyone's least favorite, Poster Boy 7. Knockdown is able to cancel his ult, so you can nullify that ability with this. And that goes for other things too, with like flight abilities and movement abilities. Like this is a ubiquitous item to buy to cancel out someone else from doing something that they want to do. If we lack mobility versus some heroes that have innate mobility, we can also purchase that mobility and kind of circumvent the natural limits that our hero has. So Warpstone and Fleetfoot from the weapon category. Majestic Leap, Superior Stamina, and Enduring Speed are 3 things from Vitality that you can get to add more mobility into your kit. And Magic Carpet's an option in the Spirit category. It's quite expensive, but it's there if that is something you really need to build into your kit and have superior mobility versus people. Now that we found out how to identify how that problematic hero or heroes are building, and we've recognized what kind of damage they're doing to us, and we've also kind of talked about the different types of counters that exist with anti-heal, cancels, silences, interrupts, and mobility. Now we're ready to see each hero, where we can find out how to spec into different builds to counter them directly despite whichever hero you're loaded into. We really want to identify a way that you can counter heroes not just by your hero matchup, but rather what you can do in-game to change the course of how that game's going to end. Before we continue with the heroes, I'm going to note 2 things. Unstoppable and also Curse, I am not going to call out for every single hero. These 2 essentially counter every hero in the game if timed right and done correctly. They fully negate either the hero themselves or a lot of the damage and status effects that they can apply to you, and I'm not going to call it out for every single one. These are the 2 best items in the game if you want to disable someone or stop someone doing something to you. They're applicable widely, and I'm not going to call them out for every hero, otherwise I'm going to be a broken record. Another catch-all that I'm not going to mention for every single hero is Bullet Armor, Spirit Armor, Enchantress Barrier, and Combat Barrier. A lot of these are going to drastically reduce damage that heroes are putting out against you. It's a catch-all for a type of damage, but I don't want to necessarily call it out for every single hero because, yet again, broken record, I'll be saying the same thing over and over again. It's like, oh, if you're taking a ton of spirit damage, build Spirit Resist, and you're just going to take 45% less spirit damage. So keep this in mind. I'm not going to call these out for every hero, but they're very important. And check the other hero's build to make sure that they're building bullet damage or spirit damage as you expect. All right, we're countering heroes A to Z. Let's start with Abrams. Abrams suffers from anti-heal. Due to Siphon Life and the way that Abrams naturally itemizes, anti-heal items are going to be great versus him. He's going to have a high HP pool, and he's going to want to regenerate a lot of heal versus you, and that's kind of what his abilities do. Anti-heal items are great versus Abrams to make it so he can't regen and keep his HP pool low. Additionally, when approaching an Abrams, it's a really good mindset to assume that he's going to melee. And to stop that heavy melee from ever hitting, all you got to do is press F. It's really easy to parry an Abrams because all you have to do is really assume that he's going to punch and look for it the whole time and get ready to read it, and it all kind of falls into place if you're ready for it. Additionally, we can use something like Ethereal Shift to dodge his ult. If you know he's coming up in the air, you can hear him up there and you know there's a sound cue for it and you can get ready for it. And you just got to time it right with your Ethereal Shift or other mobility item. Bebop's one of these heroes that can spec either way into spirit or into bullet damage, so it's a good idea to keep an eye on what he's building before you try to think about counters for him. There's also been this meme build of double bombing people, but all you gotta do is buy debuff remover and it takes care of those bombs for you. Ethereal Shift can also be used versus Bebop to break his combo, where if he's punching you in the air and he's trying to hook you again back down, you can use Ethereal Shift to dodge that second hook, and it also stops the momentum that Bebop sends you with his punch. Versus Dynamo, positioning is number 1. If you're grouped up with your teammates and you're stacked together, you're going to get black holed altogether and lose the fight no matter what. One item versus Dynamo is Rescue Beam. If you have a hero that gets black holed, you can rescue beam them out of the black hole and save them. Another cheaper option for you is Reactive Barrier. If you get black holed, you're going to automatically have a bullet shield and spirit shield that deploy automatically. This is great early on, but tapers off as the game goes on. Soul Rebirth is a great catch-all. It gives you a second life, so you can kind of screw up once and then have this be your get-out-of-jail-free card. And it's a good option if you're going to get stuck in a black hole and that Dynamo's really focusing you. There's other options like Ethereal Shift and Unstoppable that can stop you from taking that damage and getting a black hole, but I think that your best option is having something that's going to preempt it, or you don't need to react off of it. Versus Great Talon, you have a couple options. First of all, Spirit Armor is great versus this guy if he's speccing super deep into spirit damage. If he's doing a lot of spirit damage, Spirit Armor is a very obvious choice versus him. Debuff Remover can remove the effects of Trap. Knockdown can bring him out of his flight. And you can dodge Owl and also charge shot with an Ethereal Shift, which is a great option for avoiding that damage, that nuke that you know is readable and you can predict. Haze is my favorite hero, so it's sad to recommend things to do against her, but it's what must be done. One great choice is Warpstone. Warpstone not only is going to teleport you a short distance, but it's also going to give you bullet resist against her. So if you're stuck in the center of an ult that she sleeps you and then ults on top of you, a Warpstone can get you further away from there and also give you bullet resist to counterattack after you're out of her range. I cannot tell you the amount of times that I've nearly killed myself on return fire as Haze when shooting an enemy. If return fire pops, it's going to return 70% of that bullet damage directly back in your face. Haze also does spirit damage with some fixation stacking stuff and some of the items that Haze builds. So this is brutal as a squishy Haze to have someone pop return fire and you can't shoot them for 7 seconds. Metal Skin is also a super awesome option versus people that spec heavy into weapon damage. You're going to become immune to bullets and melee attacks for 3.5 seconds every 22 seconds. This will fully negate any damage, any bullet damage that is happening from Haze, and it will save your life. There's a few good options versus Infernus. The way this hero builds right now is he really relies on getting DOTs and spirit damage going on other people and healing a lot off of it. This is a hero that likes to buy Leech and likes to buy Spirit Lifesteal and Enduring Spirit, and he stays alive off of leeching, quite literally, off of his opponents. So buying those anti-heal items that we talked about, those Toxic Bullets, Healbane, and Decay, great options versus Infernus. Debuff Reducer and Debuff Remover are great options versus Infernus because they give you that debuff resist, which is going to save you HP. That's 30% HP in this case. And then Debuff Remover can take off that entire burn or bleed status effect that the Infernus is going to put on you. A great early game option versus Infernus as well is Slowing Hex. It's going to make it so he can't use his Flame Dash, and it's also going to movement slow him, and it honestly catches Infernus players off guard if you have this quite early. They kind of know that they have this escape ability in their back pocket, and then if you toss a Slowing Hex on them, they're not going to be able to run away, and they're just going to sit there and tank the gank. So it's nice to build a whole bunch of different things versus Ivy. Getting some cheap extra stamina early can help you get through kudzu bombs and get out of sticky situations where you have a stone form coming down on your head. And Warpstone, again, is a great option versus these bullet heroes that also kind of trap you under them. So you can get out of the stone form coming down and you can teleport out and then turn the fight around with that bullet resist. And Silence Cliff is a great option versus Ivy to prevent the stone form from coming out and also that ultimate to fly away. Plus, as I said earlier, Ivy's a healer, so you know the drill. Toxic Bullets, Decay, Healbane, that's your bread and butter for these types of heroes. Kelvin's been a tricky hero to spec into recently. He's feeling pretty strong right now. Some options that I like to get against him is anti-heal. It is going to prevent his Frost Grenade. It's going to also prevent his Frozen Shelter from being as effective as they can be. Secondly, mobility items are great versus him because it's going to let you not get caught in that Frost Shelter. And also, if he's Ice Beaming, it's going to allow you to circumvent that slow with some kind of jump or dashes. And then lastly, Ethereal Shift. If you're stuck inside the dome, this is 3.5 seconds that you can kill, not taking damage. Great item. This is quickly becoming my favorite item in the game. As I'm making this video, I learn more and more as I intentionally think about these things, and this item's broken. I'm going to say it now. You're going to keep on hearing me recommend this. It's an awesome item. Geist largely plays off of her swap ability and likes to actively cast a lot of the other tools in her kit. She likes to spam her spells pretty often. I cannot name the amount of times that Silence has got me a Geist kill. Geist essentially has a progression bar of how likely she is to use her ult right above her head. It's her health pool. And it's super easy to read when a Geist is going to want to ult you, and it's really easy to apply that silence a couple seconds before. Additionally, also, the bread and butter anti-heal, Toxic Bullets, Healbane, Decay, all great on Geist. She casts her spells and damages herself, and usually recuperates a lot of that through Spirit Lifesteal, and that's an easy way to change that up. As you may know, Lash is a hypermobile hero that really excels off of using all of his spells in quick conjunction. Silence and Slowing Hex really hurt this hero. If he can't cast his spells, he's basically just a walking gun, and it's really hard for him to operate. Slowing Hex is great because it disables his grapple, and this is a large source of Lash's mobility early game, and is a great tool to lock him down early on. A well-timed Ethereal Shift can stop a ground strike from hitting you and save you a whole lot of HP. If you're spamming that Ethereal Shift as you get to the ground, it's going to nullify that damage and you can turn the fight. McGinnis is a unique hero as she only has 2 stamina charges, so a lot of the time mobility items are going to be able to outpace her and make it so she can't chase you as well. Additionally, in lane versus McGinnis, monster rounds do a ton of work. They're going to do 35% extra damage to her turrets, which is going to let you clear them faster, get some souls off of it, and also make her lane harder. In general, I've seen this hero build pretty tanky recently, so that classic anti-heal is going to be pretty good, especially the bleeds that are doing percentage-based damage. Those are going to be very impactful. Krill is one of those other heroes where positioning is highly important versus him. Not only are you going to want to play with your team, or at least in a duo, so if you're getting ulted by Krill, there's some kind of answer for it. You're not just sitting there. You can also jump up onto elevated surfaces if you notice that he's burrowed under you and is about to pop up. If you see him use that spell, you can hop up on an elevated surface and he struggles to chase you up there, and it will save you a lot of health if you kind of get in that groove. Reactive Barrier is a great option as he's going to largely walk up to you and ult you, and this is going to give you some extra bullet shield and spirit shield to negate some of that damage. And the Silence Glyph, Slowing Hex combo, yet again, pretty good options early game. If he can't burrow, he's going to struggle against you, and it's going to be tough for him. This is another one of those anti-heal heroes. He's going to have a high health pool, and he's going to heal a lot, so if you can get those anti-heal items, this is a great hero to use those against. Paradox is a tricky one to work around. If you know Paradox, you kind of understand the combo of hitting a kinetic carbine, putting down a wall, and immediately swapping right after to swap you through that wall. So whatever we can do to break that combo is going to be highly effective versus Paradox. So that's why either line of sighting Paradox to not get hit by a carbine when you hear it ticking. That's going to be one great option because you're going to listen for that carbine and make sure you're not getting caught by it. And then also mobility items are going to help you out too. A warp stone to be able to dodge that carbine or break that combo. If you do get swapped, you want to reposition yourself so you're not fighting through the wall. Also, if you get hit by the carbine, you can still ethereal shift after being hit by the carbine, and that's going to make that whole carbine wall swap combo not work, and you're going to be safe. If you can catch a pocket off guard with a silence, they're not going to be able to flying cloak or satchel, and it usually makes a pretty easy kill. Additionally, Affliction is going to last 18 seconds and deal tiny amounts of damage over that long period of time. So if you can either debuff reduce, or even better, debuff remove it, you're going to be able to fight through these long fights better versus pocket. A lot of people struggle versus Seven's ult, but it's actually quite simple to counter. All you need is a knockdown, and you're able to put that knockdown on him while he's in Stormcloud, and then a couple seconds later, he's going to be knocked down out of Stormcloud and just be sitting there as a sitting duck. I feel like it's also important to note that you don't need the knockdown for Stormcloud. You can also line of sight Seven and kind of put a wall in between you and him, and that Stormcloud isn't going to do damage anymore. Seven largely does spirit damage, so getting spirit armor is great versus him, and then also getting attack speed slow to counter out his power surge is a great option as well. Shiv likes long drawn out fights where he can heal off of his opponents, so yet again that anti-heal trio is going to be effective versus Shiv. Also, if you can remove his bleeds with a debuff reducer or remover, that's also going to be a great option for you. Vindicta struggles to get out damage if you've broken line of sight with her, so playing around cover in lane or in the later game is going to help a lot. Hiding under bridges if she's in the air or breaking line of sight with different pieces of cover is going to be essential for playing against the Vindicta. Vindicta also only has 2 stamina bars, so she's going to lack the innate mobility that other heroes have, and you can make up for that by building more mobility to get on top of her and hunt her down. This hero struggles when there's heroes up close, especially if the other person isn't a great aimer. It's going to make it pretty difficult for this Vindicta to get damage off on you. 2 other great options versus Vindicta's stake is debuff remover and also ethereal shift. It's going to let you break the tether for both of them, and you can run away and change your positioning versus that Vindicta to put a wall in between you and her. Viscous at the end of the day is a spellcaster. A lot of their utility is coming from all the different spells that they have to use in their arsenal, and silencing a Viscous is one of the best tools that you can use to prevent their survivability and also mobility. Also, additional mobility is great versus Puddle Punch if you need to correct for something that put you so seriously out of position. Buying extra stamina in lane versus Warden is a great way to make sure that you're not caught in his binding word during the laning phase, and also it's still effective later too. Debuff remover, ethereal shift, it can also take you out of that binding word if you happen to be caught in it. Slowing Hex is pretty nice versus willpower as well. This hero kind of builds like a race car and really likes to be moving around these fights really quickly, so if you can prevent that from happening, Warden's going to struggle. I'm sure you've been caught by a Wraith ult into getting shot in the head, and there's a couple different options to deal with that. Wraith's ult can be cancelled by a well-timed ethereal shift. If this isn't yet your favorite item in the game, I do not know what to tell you. This is so good. Also, Metal Skin and Return Fire are good options for a Wraith that wants to shoot you. Yamato is pretty similar to Geist in the sense that she's going to have this ult that's going to turn the tide of a fight at the just last second. So as yet again explained with Geist, you can kind of watch that health bar and understand when that ult is about to come in and make sure to silence right before it. If you're able to silence right before the shadow transformation comes out, you're going to be able to easily take out the Yamato and there will be no more fight for her. And there you have it, a counter to every single hero in Deadlock. Hopefully this can turn the tides in your games and make it so that you can turn around games where there's a specific problematic hero and you can understand how to itemize against them to turn around that game for you. If I missed any items or strategies for specific heroes, please let me know down in the comments. As I said earlier, I'm kind of learning as I go through these videos myself. I feel like I have a pretty good understanding of the game, but obviously I don't know everything. So let me know if there's any specific things that you would say matter in your games. And if you made it here, drop a sub down below. My content's going to continue to be like this. It's going to continue to be analytical Deadlock content. And I'm trying to bring information to you so that you can win more Deadlock games. Thanks for watching and have a good one.